Thank you. Scripture reading for this evening will be taken from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 29. We'll begin reading in verse 10. Jeremiah chapter 29, beginning in verse 10. It's the New American Standard Bible that'll be up here on the overhead slide. For this is what the Lord says. When 70 years have been completed for Babylon, I will visit you and fulfill my good word to you, to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for your prosperity and not for your disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will let myself be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and all the places where I have driven you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to a place from where I have sent you into exile. I want you to think for just a moment, what are the most fortunate circumstances that would happen to you in the near future? Now, don't worry, you're not going to have to say it out loud or tell me, but what would be, in your mind, the most fortunate set of circumstances that would happen to you? Would it be winning the lottery? You say, well, it'd have to be because I don't play the lottery. Would it be coming into an inheritance? Now, that necessarily means that somebody has to have passed in order for you to receive that. So that wouldn't necessarily be the most, fortunate circumstances. Maybe the most fortunate circumstances for you is along the lines of your health, for you to be whole, for you to be pain-free, or to be cancer-free, for you to be rejuvenated. Maybe it has to do with a relationship, and the most fortunate circumstances for you would be to have an opportunity to mend a particular relationship, or maybe to solidify a relationship. And what I'm trying to do is to show you that most fortunate circumstances are going to be, for you, maybe different for somebody else, right? It depends upon where you are. You ever had a fortune cookie and read your fortune out of a fortune cookie? Did you know that the fortune cookie was actually made by a Japanese man in San Francisco? He was an American in the late 1800s or the early 1900s, and it was a design, of course, in order to bring customers in, kind of a gimmick so that they would buy his food, but it actually started with, I thought this was interesting, a Japanese man. The Chinese fortune cookies actually started off with a Japanese-American man. Now, the production thereof of fortune cookies after World War II, for some reason, went from Japanese production to Chinese, if you understand. Anyways, that's more history than you wanted to know about the fortune cookie. Have you ever gone to a fortune teller? You say, if I have, I wouldn't tell you. Somebody that could tell your fortune, and that's usually the way that they put it, isn't it? It's not that they are going to tell you your future, or they're not going to prophesy. It's they're going to tell you your fortune, because it's this concept of something good or something positive that is going to come your way. Can they really do that, by the way? Have you ever played the game Wheel of Fortune? My mama and Papa Sikes, this is one of their favorite games whenever they were together. Watching that, I guess, to just dream about those prizes that would come their way. You ever heard of a soldier of fortune? What is another name for a soldier of fortune? A mercenary. That's fortunate. That is fortuitous. We use phrases like that in every day, and generally speaking, when we are talking about something that is fortuitous or something that is most fortunate, then we are talking about good things or positive things, an increase in wealth or in status or in acceptance. And in fact, you might have had somebody say to you that, I hope that you make your fortunes, or by such and such age, I hope that you have made your fortune. Let me ask you, has that come about? Are you still waiting on making your fortune? I think most of us, that's something that's in the future whenever we put it within the terminology of increasing wealth. But fortune also has within it this concept of luck, perhaps by chance. In other words, the outcome is not all that likely. Here we are, right? Not so much in the category of being fortunate in having mass wealth or something that is big on the horizon that's going to overwhelm me by way of riches, but it can mean, fortunate can mean destiny, it can mean karma, kismet, fate, but being a man of faith, I like this one in particular, and that is providence. Do you hold the key to your future, to your fortune? I have a picture that I'm going to show you on this next slide of a truck and trailer that on that truck it says Fortune Transportation. And I just want your imagination to go just for a little bit, because you see on that trailer that it says fortune, but it has a rainbow, and at the end of the rainbow there's a pot of gold even there. What's in that truck? Are there riches in that truck? I think it would look like a different truck if it was riches, right? It'd be more of an armored truck if it had riches in it. But I want your mind, if this truck was to pull up to your house and begin to unload, what's in it? What is fortune to you? Is it money? Is it furniture? Is it somebody that's on the move? Is it for you tools, maybe? Right, men? Maybe it's clothing. What would you say was coming out of that? What would be the most favorable or fortunate circumstances? Fortunate, and our mind just kind of goes, our imagination, and we can think, Fortune 500? Fortune 500? Do you know where Fortune 500 comes from? Fortune 500 is actually a list of the top 500 companies in America. You say, I know all this, then go back to sleep, that's fine. But it's a list of the top 500 companies that are in America, and actually Fortune 500 got its start in 1955 with the magazine, and they began to produce this list of the 500 greatest companies that are the best at being productive, at paying dividends, at being the most profitable. And who would you say is on that list? You say, I don't care. Well, maybe you do care. You say, I'm an investor. Actually, I do care. I have a portfolio. I have stocks and bonds. I want to know what those men, those CEOs of those big companies are doing so that I might accumulate my wealth. By the way, did you know that Walmart, Amazon, and Exxon are on the top 3 of that list? But you think, if I can just read about these people and the way in which they did things, then maybe I can amass my wealth. Do you think that that's the draw of a magazine like that, to list the top 500 in the nation? Why are we so enamored with fortune? Why does it just seem that to hear that word puts our mind into another realm? It's almost like this realm of whole new possibilities and almost like a world of dreams. And then we come back to reality and we realize that we don't have all that much control. Now, if you were born into a wealthy family, or you were born, as the phrase goes, with a silver spoon within your mouth, then you have been able to accumulate wealth by inheritance, by just maybe a grandparent or a parent that had passed that down to you. If you have a name like the Rockefellers, then you are not going to have a worry for the rest of your life if you have a name like the Rockefellers. America does have their Camelot families, those ones whose name carries a little bit more sway than others, but we think of those people and being as ones who were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And for one to come out of that family, it's almost as if they have to come out from underneath the shadow of that great wealth in order to make a name of their own to live up to. And you say, boy, I would love to have that type of a problem. You know, whenever you have 7 kids within the family and you start doing the math on the inheritance, it doesn't look very good. I mean, there are blessings of being from a large family, but a portion of the inheritance is not one of those. But let me just say this, and this has nothing to do with my family, my earthly family, but this family name, I would put this family name up against any other name, earthly name, because the fortunes are so much different. But there is one family that is truly blessed by God. And I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let you kind of stew upon what I mean by it. But turn with me, if you would, to the book of Matthew and see what Jesus says here. If I was to write a book about how to get poor, you say, oh yeah, that would be a bestseller. How to be poor and love it. You say, I don't need a book like that. I'm living that right now. You don't need to guide me into anything like that. What kind of books actually sell? There are actually those books that say the opposite of that. Well, listen to what Jesus says here and think of how this must have sounded to those folks whenever they first heard Jesus say, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Oops. Oh, what happens to my Fortune 500 company with that? And those things that are so important and those things that I want. What did Jesus say right off the bat? Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, where neither thieves do not break in and steal. And then he lays down this principle there within the next verse. If you were following along within your Bible and not on the screen, you know what he says there. I'm just going to, you're out of luck for just a little while you have to listen to me. But he lays down this principle that is a lesson for us in life. You ever walked into a neighborhood where, and you see these, of course, around castles of great big walls, but even within the city, you can be in a city block and suddenly there is a gated community, or so you think, and you look within that community and there's one house that is surrounded by such a large gate and the walls are so high. And even some of these houses, being so big, have bars on the windows. I mean, this almost sounds like a prison to me. Bars on the windows, you got bars that are keeping you in. And what was it that Jesus said? He says, do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. And for all of their wealth, what do they have to do? They have to guard it. They've got to protect it. They have to at least have within their mind a small portion of fear that somebody is going to come along and take those things that don't belong to them. Now, it would be nice, I should say, that if we didn't have to worry about those things, if people like that were not around, that didn't break in and steal things. But Jesus says, as long as you are having this priority of amassing wealth, and now we get to verse 21, he says, for where your treasure is, there your heart is going to be also. If amassing wealth, if growing in prominence, if becoming popular, if making it to that Fortune 500 list is a priority of yours, all of that can be taken away in a heartbeat. All of that can corrode and can corrupt. You ever taken a sweater out of the closet that has been there through the warmer months to wear it for the winter, and it has holes in it? What's happened? The mice get a hold of it? Well, the moths got a hold of it, and they started eating on that. And it's the same thing that's going to happen for those things, those earthly treasures. What happens to them? That Cadillac, oh, it's so nice. It's going to need an oil change, right? The tires are going to wear out. The transmission eventually is going to go out. Do not focus upon earthly things. And if this is your fortune, then you are going to be transported right to destruction, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Whenever we ask our kids, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? Do we realize what we are doing whenever we give accolades and praise to becoming rich, aside from growing within God? Now, there is nothing wrong with being rich. We're going to get to that, where Paul talks to Timothy and giving him those instructions to give to those Christians who are rich. There's nothing wrong with being rich. But if you make that your focus, that is your fortune, that's what you want, that's what you desire, then all of a sudden the job becomes more important than worship service. So that would never happen to us. All of a sudden, my toys become more important than studying God's word. All of a sudden, those relationships that are outside of the kingdom become more important, hanging out with my buddies and pals rather than with my brothers and sisters in Christ. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, and your focus is going to shift, and you're going to be engaged in that which is fleshly, which is earthly, which is corruptible, and will be destroyed. And so Jesus goes on. Let's read verse 21 and then continue on through. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So then, if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And all of a sudden you realize he hasn't changed topics here at all, has he? In this whole section, what he is talking about is, what are you focused upon? And so whenever he says, if your eye be dark, then how bold is that darkness? And then he says, you cannot serve two masters. Well, then he concludes with, what do you want out of this life? To be rich in this world's deeds and goods, or to be rich in your relationship with God? Are you laying up a treasure on earth or in heaven? For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Let me go back, okay? It's the day of judgment. It's the day in which God is separating the sheep from the goats. Have you made your fortune? Are you rich? Are you chosen? Do you have his name? Are you on the list? It makes a world of difference of where my heart is and what is important to me. And so Christ starts off with not a book of how to be poor and love it, but it's not a book about how to get rich quick either. This is all about how to be right with God. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You want to make your fortune, forget all about getting rich and think only about being godly. Fortune transports, think of it, it's full of spiritual blessings that only come our way whenever we are walking in accordance with the will of God. It's not about what you become, it's about who you are and whose you are. It's not about what you make, it's about what you give, right? It's not about what you become, it's about what you sacrifice. It's all about a fortune that will last. You ever heard of fortune hunters or gold diggers? That falls almost within the same line as a soldier of fortune or a mercenary, somebody that will fight as long as you will pay them. Have you ever personally known a mercenary? I'm not talking about seeing one on TV and watched a show about a mercenary. You ever know somebody that was willing to be hired for money, to go to the highest bidder, to say, I will fight for the one who pays, and you'd better pay me if you hire me? I mean, how many of us are soldiers of fortune in this world? We give our lives to the highest bidder. We have yet to focus upon what is right and wrong. It's not anything about what the Lord wants in my life. It's about, how can I get rich? How can I do what I want to do? How can I live that life that I want to live? And we look at fortune as being our calling, and Jesus says, wait a minute. That is not what you are to be about. You cannot serve both God and money, because you're going to find yourself with divided allegiances, and you're going to hate one or the other. Have you reached that point yet? You say, what point? I fell asleep on you again. Have you reached the point where you see that chasing after riches is of no value to you? Now, you have to admit, and I'm not asking you to raise your hands on any of this, of course, but you have to admit, for those of you that have come to that conclusion, that took a while, didn't it? And I think that our world encourages our young people to search after wealth, that is your God, and it is not. This may shock you, but if you are going to be a minister, you got to make this decision early on. Now, I'm not saying that you don't take care of me. And in fact, I did just receive a raise, and I am so thankful for that. But they just don't compute. They're not compatible with one another. That doesn't mean that ministers don't get this attitude of wanting more and wanting this and that we're frail, we're human. But we got to be reminded, if such a truck as fortune drives by, that my fortune is laid up in store for those that love God. It is for those that act in accordance with his will. I don't need fortune cookies or fortune tellers. God has plans for my welfare. I love that chapter in Jeremiah. I wanted to read that in connection with what we were studying on Sunday morning. But God said, what? You must seek me. Can we sing that song together? Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, singing Alleluia, Alleluia. Ask and it shall be given unto you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Singing Alleluia, Alleluia. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Singing Alleluia, Alleluia. What's that song about? Well, he has just been talking about the lilies of the field. He's just been talking about how the grass grows and how the birds are in the air. And he says, does your Father not take care of those? Will he not take care of you? Don't you think that he has you within his heart? Whenever I set my heart on treasures of this world, I have denied that I believe that my Lord is in control. Whenever I get ulcers because I am worried about where my next dollar is going to come from, I have denied that the Lord is in control. Jesus says you cannot serve both God and money. You must make a choice. You don't lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, but instead you lay up yourself treasure in heaven. All right, I got two more. This verse from Timothy that I had promised you in 1 Timothy chapter 6, beginning in verse 6. Listen to what the apostle says. Remember, it's not wrong to have earthly riches, but godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. For we have food and covering. With these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and trap and many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil. And some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and have pierced themselves with many griefs. But flee from these things, you man of God, and pursue righteousness, faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith, and take hold of the eternal life to which you were called, and for which you made the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. What do riches do? What did he say? Riches tend to plunge an individual into longings and to destroy. You don't have to look very deep in Hollywood, and you can just barely scratch the surface to see that riches are corruptible, that they can corrupt an individual. Now, I'm not saying that all actors are corrupted and that they're all evil. I do know that there are some Christian actors out there that are trying to hold up faith's light over there, okay? But by and large, right, you have to say, would you ever want your kid to go into such a thing? I heard a story. Oh, Brett, I'm going to bring you right in before I even confirm this story. But I heard this man was actually good enough on a skateboard. Now, his dad had built him a half pipe. Ivan built him a half pipe in the backyard whenever he was young. And so he got pretty good at his skateboarding. And this is during a time whenever skateboarding had not yet taken off with X Games and things like this. And what I have learned is that Brett might have had a chance at getting into such tournaments and going pro on a skateboard. Did you know that about Brett? Oh man, I know, he's full of surprises over there. Guess why he didn't? Because Carol is what I heard. Is this right? Carol said, I won't have anything of it. His mom, being a godly mother, probably foresaw all the activities that such skateboarders would be involved in, and what maybe even fame and money might do to her young man, which she wanted to be a godly man. And she said no. And I thank her for that. Lay not up treasures on earth, because those who desire to get rich fall into many harmful and destructive heresies. But look at this, staying in that same chapter, look at verse 17. This is still 1 Timothy chapter 6. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to set their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. He didn't say that it was a sin to be rich, but the love of money leads to all sorts of evil. No, it's not a sin to be rich, but you simply use your riches for whose glory? So that I can be one that is born with a silver spoon within my mouth and am rich within the eyes of God in my relationship with Him, and still be able to transfer this world's goods onto the next. Fortune transports. Tell them that are rich in this world's deeds or goods to be rich in good deeds. That's not class warfare, and in fact, it's not even a book about how to be poor and to love it at the same time. It's how to be content in the Lord, regardless of the circumstances that you find yourself in. And that's what Paul was saying in Philippians chapter 4, whenever he said, I have found the secret to being in need and having want, to being hungry and well-filled. And what was that secret? He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's Paul's summation. It does matter who you are and where you're from, but it matters more what you're doing with what God has given to you. You may be that 1-talent person in this world's goods. You may be that 10-talent person that has been blessed inexplicably with great wealth, but either way, your fortune is where? It's in heaven. And we can both find what is best and what is good. We're going to look at one last passage of Scripture. Turn with me to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, as we conclude. But I want you, as we look at this passage, I want to ask you this question. We're going to start in verse 34 and just read through to the end of the chapter. But I gave you a few companies' names a little while ago. Could you tell me the names of those companies that I said? Oh, it does matter to you, does it? How many churches do you think were on that Fortune 500 list? Do you think Emporia Avenue, Church of Christ, popped up on the Fortune 500 list? You could Google it and search and try to find it, but we are actually a 501c. Do you know what a 501c is? A 501c means we are a nonprofit that kind of hinders us from being on the Fortune 500 list. But let me ask you this. What company can even compare to the Lord's church and what it offers by way of dividends, interest, return on your investment, retirement, a golden parachute, whatever you want to call it? What company compares for that last day? Whenever I asked you earlier, whenever you stand before the Lord on that day of judgment, and the Lord is going to ask what? What companies were you invested in? Do you think that He's going to ask that? Do you think He's going to say, oh, well, let me see your balance sheet? Do you think that He wants to see your 401k? He wants to know what was in your bank account and whether it was backed up by the FDIC? Do you think that is going to matter, that you have anything? Or is it going to matter to the Lord if you are His? And if your name is listed within His book, in the Lamb's Book of Life? You know, I wonder if the contents of that book were made available to us. I pray that everybody in this auditorium's name would be written in the Lamb's Book of Life. But that's something you have to ask yourself. Is it? We're going to close with this passage, Mark chapter 8. Have you made your fortune? And He summoned the crowd together with His disciples, and He said to them, If anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it benefit a person to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what could a person give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him whenever he comes in glory of his Father with his holy angels. Okay, it's a black Cadillac, or it's a diesel 4x4, or it can get 80 miles to the gallon because it's an electric ride. And Satan says, how bad do you want it? Or it's a big house, thousands of square feet. It's within the perfect neighborhood. It's got a pool within the backyard. And Satan says to you, how bad do you want it? Or it's an elixir, something that you can just drink and you are guaranteed that you are going to live for the next 50 years. I know. Satan says, yeah, it's yours. How bad do you want it? It's a career in law. It's a career in medicine. It's a career in politics, power, status, riches. And Satan says, how bad do you want it? Jesus says simply, it's not worth it. It's not worth your soul. Isn't that amazing? Our God's love for us is so immense that it is greater than anything else that he has created. All of the riches in the world, your soul is most valuable to him. He desires for you to be with him forever. He has prepared a place that is better than anything that you could buy. With rooms built upon, he's gone to prepare a place for us. But we must put our heart there. Where is your treasure? Is it in heaven? If not, won't you place it there this evening as we stand and as we sing?